introduction to the people on the panel. We're going to do a quick introduction to the people on the panel. So first and foremost, W's in the chat for Frey. Hey, Frey, how are you? Good. Frey, question for you. From our conversation last week, because we dealt with anti-Blackness and racism, what are you hoping to build on this week from what we talked about last week?
I'm hoping to build on, last week we also mentioned environmental racism, and I think that would tie in really good with all of the topics on the screen. So that's what I would build on.
Awesome. Thank you. Give me 1 second. Madam, how are you?
Good. Thanks for asking. As always, I love your panels. Very educational. One of the best ones out there.
Thank you. Madam, I don't know if you got to catch it last week, but last week we really dug into anti-Blackness and racism. And we have a couple of different things this week, continue to break it down even more. What are you looking forward to actually speaking to this week?
I mean, one of them would be about like race and the classism. I heard you mention something about that and the difference, because I've been trying to educate people on that myself. So that's one I'd love to talk about.
Absolutely. Listen, it's interesting how a lot of people don't know the difference. I'll hold it. We're not gonna give that away.
Yeah, no, I know how you feel.
Perfect. Jillian, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing? Long time no see.
I know. Hey, stranger. Jillian, again, last week we started to break down racism and anti-Blackness. This week we continue to build on it with multiple things, different intersections. Jillian, what are you looking for? What are you looking forward to dealing with this week?
You know, I don't think anything specific. I'm just looking forward to being part of the conversation. I'm kind of not super early, but early in the sort of transformation of like seeing the things that I didn't think were issues, if that makes sense. You know, I used to say, well, that's not a problem anymore. That was a problem years ago. So that, you know, I'm still kind of on that journey of like being aware, I guess.
Okay. Good. That's a start to some deconstruction. All right, perfect. Give me 1 second here, Jillian. Buzzy. Hey, Buzzy.
Hi, Santana.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Wonderful. Buzzy, last week we really got into racism and anti-Blackness. This week we build on that with different intersections. What are you looking forward to talking about with this conversation?
Maybe spaces, mainly because I was just we were having a discussion about this in my composition class. We read an essay called Black Men in Public Spaces. And it was written in 1987. And this Black man was sharing his story about being in affluent areas while being Black and realizing that people around him were reacting to his presence just by merely being there. Now, what's interesting about this is even then he had an acknowledgement and awareness for something. There's an entire paragraph in this essay, I think it's like the 7th paragraph in the essay, where he starts talking about women that react to him. And he actually has a moment of sympathizing with women and recognizing that women that are reacting to him have a reason to react to him that way, especially because he recognized that he was a member of an overrepresented population in street crimes at that time. But he also, it did not help him feel less isolated in that. And so it was a very interesting conversation to have. And then you think about towards the end.
Hold on, save it, Buzzy. This is just the introduction. Don't give all the good stuff away yet. Don't didn't give it all away yet. Just an FYI to the mods in the chat, because I saw the person, whoever, chicken, whatever the person is, I have no idea who that is. They're not friends with the host. They can be muted and blocked. I don't care. I don't know who that person is. Sorry. All right. Real quick, let's finish running through these introductions. Chip, how are you?
Yo, what's good, bro? How are you, man?
Good. Chip, last week we dug into anti-blackness and racism. This week we continue to build on it. What are you looking forward to?
I'm here to represent white people.
Okay. All right. I hear you. You're going to hold it down for them, right?
I'm going to hold it down. We ain't no racist, bro. No matter what you try to tell us, we ain't racist, bro.
I hear you. You know what? We're going to dig into it. Perfect. Give me 1 second.
I'm down to deconstruct, though. I'm down to deconstruct. You know, maybe you change my mind, right?
Okay, sure. Give me a second. Last but not least, Life with Nancy. Is it okay if I call you Nancy?
Yes, of course.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Nancy, last week we actually got into racism and anti-blackness. This week we actually continue to build on those different intersections. What are you looking forward to this week?
I think that I can bring to the table a little bit of perspective coming from like a different minority group. So like I'm an immigrant, so I migrated here from Mexico when I was little. And I have a really interesting perspective because when I first got to the States, it sounds kind of weird to say, but when I was about 10 years old, and I had never seen a Black person until I moved to the United States.
Okay.
And then coming here from my parents, having bad interactions with with Black people, then I will see the way they will talk, and there's internalized racism within the Hispanic community towards Black people. And I had to deconstruct all that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We're gonna deal with it. Give me 1 second. We got one more here. P.O. How are you?
Hey, what's good, Santana? How you doing tonight, brother?
Good. P.O. Last week we dealt with.
This is Hog, by the way.
Oh, okay. What's going on?
Hey, man, do me a favor. Your mod, man, what's his name? Quan or whatever his name is.
Mm-hmm.
I put down twice in the comments because they banned my main account, so I put down on my
Bro, they just banned your second account too, boss.
Okay, I'm not sure what just happened. Okay. All right. Let's keep it going. Guys, before we get into it, I want to make sure that we understand a couple of different things here. First and foremost, here we don't do any of the isms, right? So I'm sorry. Please be mindful of the words TikTok friendly language. So when we're having these conversations, please continue to use words like pew pew, unalive, mustache man, AB, all of those things that will not only protect your life, but it will help us continue to have these conversations. Also, we are a safe and friendly community. What does that mean? That means we don't deal with any of the isms, racism, sexism, classism, none of it. We don't do that on the panel, nor in the chat. Speaking of the chat, please do not use caps. Caps are for mods, and it will pull my attention from the panel to the chat, and we want to make sure that we can focus in on having these conversations. If you're interested in actually joining the conversation, go ahead and request up. We will continue to actually flush this conversation out in these panels. If you're in the chat, keep tapping the screen. Let's go ahead and get the likes up to 50,000 likes. Also, I'm going to keep resetting our daily gift goal to these little 1-cent gift goals. If we can actually knock that out, that would really help us. So right now it's the pink heart puffs. Last but not least, we do have a nightly donation goal, which W's in the chat for Gene, who kicked us off right. Gene sent a $1 donation saying, I don't know about you, but I'm so excited about that peace deal. Yeah. I hear you, Gene. Guys, W's in the chat for Gene. That means we only have $249 left in the nightly donation goal. So Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all the pay links in the link tree in the bio. Santana Speaks 24. Best way to support the live. Everything is accepted. Anything's appreciated. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started.
Real quick.
1 second.
Yo,
So,
your mod.
sure. We're going to start with Frey. Frey, I'm going to start with you. So I know we started with the actual premise behind basing.
I'm out of here, bro. I'm out of here. The fucking garbage.
Okay, well, hey, Chip, you can just leave, bud. This is not an airport. You can just go. Like, legitimately, you can just leave. It's not an airport. We don't need an announcement. Anyway, Frey. So we dug into a couple of different things, but I know where you want to go. I know where you want to start. I know where you want to start, but I kind of want to start somewhere else. Because of what we just saw, Frey, I would like to start with understanding the difference between genuine discourse and pure ego, right? Because there's a sense of hubris that people exhibit when it comes to actually addressing these type of issues, right? When it comes to getting feedback, hearing feedback, and working through these different topics, right? It's something that I've noticed around this entire app is a lot of people put something on their background and they'll say all this, all men, all white people, all, and someone will see that all and immediately take offense. And not only immediately take offense, but come up and say, well, it can't be me, right? And sometimes they can get to the point of having genuine discourse, but a lot of times they can't stow their ego enough to hear what's being said. So starting there, what's the difference as far as being able to make it from, pure ego to genuine discourse, and why is that important?
Well, give me a second. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So you can't come out the box and say things like it's not all white people, it's not all men, it's not all Christians or whatever, because it is. Okay. And you have to, let however that makes you feel uncomfortable. You just have to sit there and sit in it and realize that if you're not racist, if you're not bigoted, if you're not misogynistic, then you have to do the deconstruction on all those things. And what I mean by that is, yes, it is all white people, it is all men, it is all Christians. For me, it's all Christians, okay? That's my straight up opinion. And I have a reason for saying it's all Christians. I could get into that, but
okay, yeah, no. Listen, we'll get into that in just a moment.
But it's just, you can't make a claim and separate yourself from a group if you belong to that group.
Got it. Madam, why do people feel the need to actually separate themselves from those groups when they see that type of backdrop, or when they hear those things, like all men, or all white people, or like Frey said, all Christians? Like, why do they immediately feel the need to separate?
So here's my theory on it. For them to want to separate themselves from the situation means they have to acknowledge to some degree that it applies to them, even though, because the thing is, all people want to basically, feel like they're the best version of themselves, that they're not capable of these things, like how it takes somebody to point out something that people do is like a bad habit. So they'll hear the generalization, like all of a race, all of a religion, whatever the major like groups are. And, they'll be like, no, that's not possible. Like, for instance, I'll give an example. I won't go deep into it. Like, I'm probably going to get some slack for saying this, but at first, until I went into another live, it was that Black people can't be racist to other people. Like, because I'm a mixed breed, so person.
Don't say
mixed,
that, friend.
Well, I don't mean
biracial.
Biracial. I couldn't think of the term. It was a lack of better term. I'm so sorry. But yeah, like, so I, was taught a certain type of way by both sides of my family. And like going into those groups, like, you don't want to feel like you're included in it. That's why they separate themselves, because it means they have to acknowledge to some degree that it's true. And then that it just basically plays off their self-esteem, and it makes them feel like they're a terrible person, or they, like, if, like, say for like you're a devout Christian or something, I feel like that takes away from their characteristic. But I won't bore everybody by going in deep because I talk about this way too much. But that's about the general version of what I would say. I believe it's like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Listen, I freaking love that. I love that. I love that. Rolling it forward, Jillian. Jillian, why? I'm gonna. Jillian, why do you think men get so offended when they see the all men?
Oh, that's a rough one. I work at a biker bar. So I think that, honestly, I don't know about this one because I don't think any of them would be offended. I'm trying to think of the men in my life. But I think people in general, when it's, back to the all of anything, I think we have this, I think all people have a little narcissistic voice in our head. Like, if it's about me, I'm the good of that group.
Yeah.
And I think it's learning to turn that voice off, turn the ego down, and actually pay attention. And it is uncomfortable to look at something of yourself that, whether it's inherently racist or sexist or whatever, but it's uncomfortable to look at that and say, like, have I thought things wrong, or have I looked at things in a way that I'm not proud of? Yeah. So I think it's about being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I completely agree. Buzzy. I agree with Jillian. Like, that uncomfortability is something that gets people every time. Why is it so hard for people to sit in that? And why is it that more people tend to, for lack of better words, crash out than actually deal with it?
Oftentimes in conversations where there is a targeted audience, people have a habit of looking in the mirror when they should be looking out the window. So rather than seeing those around them and the circumstances that contributed to this conversation, they see the reflection of themselves. They pigeonhole themselves. They keyhole their perspective that is uniquely tailored to them. And they stand 10 toes down. In my existence, I don't do X, Y, Z. Therefore, this can't be true.
Yeah. I agree. They tend to actually say, you know what? I haven't done it, or I haven't seen it, or I don't allow it, so it can't be true. And they push back. Nancy, question for you. Because you started talking about, like, your experience, and you said you were Puerto Rican, right?
No, Mexican.
Mexican. I'm sorry. I apologize. I know within the Mexican and Latino community, the Hispanic community, that it's very similar to the Black community in the sense that men tend to elude a lot of machismo, right? A lot of bravado, a lot of swagger. They have to always be right and never actually deal with being told that they're wrong, or necessarily correcting those types of things. Nancy, why is it so hard for certain people to, at the very least, admit that they're wrong so they can move on to dealing with the issue?
I think it's because it kind of emphasizes their complacency while also taking away the responsibility. If that makes sense. Especially like in a machismo kind of, and I hate to say it because obviously not all, like what we're talking about, not everybody's like that. Like actually grew up with a dad that is not at all machista. But that doesn't come to say, like I said, I did growing up, and I remember, and it's in my head. I remember my dad making some racist comments towards Black people, and I never forgot it, even though my dad is not technically machista. And I had to deconstruct that later in my mind and then be like, no, you know what? That's not right. You can't say like, you know.
And I'm assuming I can kind of see your PFP, Nancy. Are you white?
Well, no. I'm a little brown, but not white.
Oh, okay. I can't see your PFP that well. I didn't know if you were white presenting or Black presenting.
I guess I'm just brown, so like a little white linen, I guess. But
We'll talk about that in a moment, Nancy. Okay. Okay. Give me a second. Let's introduce the two new people on the panel. So first and foremost, we got Brenda. Brenda, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Brenda, last week we dealt with racism and anti-Blackness. This week we continue to roll it forward. We are dealing with specifically different intersections of that. Brenda, what are you looking forward to talking about this week with the different topics that we have?
Well, I would have to say, because this is my first time. Well, I was here last night.
I remember you.
I just found your live, so
okay.
I thought it was fantastic. So I decided to come back. So thanks for having me. Well, as a white woman who grew up in a pretty conservative Christian, Catholic household, to be honest, I didn't realize how racism is probably still in my family. And I try to be as anti-racist as I can and stuff like that. Like, learning pretty recently in regards to like intersectionality and that sort of thing, and realizing how so many white people probably have never even heard the word, let alone learn about it and practice it. So I'm all about learning, and I did have a situation with my brother one time in regards to racism.
Okay, well, hold that thought, because
okay.
I want to introduce Lady P. 1 second. Lady P.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing good, just being Black.
Hey,
you know what I'm saying? So,
listen, you ain't got to throw it in everybody's face. Don't do that.
Hey.
Lady P, you were here last week. You were amazing last week. You're here this week. Now, I'm not even going to necessarily say the same thing that I said, or the question I have for everyone else. I'm just going to actually flat out tell you that since you were here last week helping out, I expect you to actually bring it this week even more. Like, you understand that you have to take it up to the next level, right?
Okay.
All right. What are you looking forward to talking about this week with the different topics on the background?
I think we definitely do want to talk a lot about classism and racism. Hold on, let me turn this volume down on the other line. I have a bad habit of I'm a little divergent, so I will be on more than one live at a time. So I really do want to break down the classism versus racism topic. Hey, Erica, I really do want to break that down because a lot of white people love to use classism to invalidate racism. Meanwhile, they both exist separately and work intersectionally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. Since we're already here, I'm gonna have you go ahead and chime in on where we are, right? So everyone else has already kind of went through and given their thoughts on the actual discrepancy between genuine discourse and pure ego, right? And how there's a time when people hear the things and they can't accept the things because the things make them so uncomfortable. So, Lady P, again, heavy lifting, it's on you. How do people break down those barriers, right? How do people who, when they first hear that all such and such, and they immediately have that reaction of saying, oh, not me, how do they make it past that point when they're so adverse to it when they first hear it?
I think it's going to differ contextually based on like who you're talking about. That's why location matters, because in America specifically, we come from an individualistic society, which is how capitalism works. It works based on individual thinking. We're taught that that's why people have their own grades in classes. One can pass while the other fails. That's why we have communities where some people are rich and others are poor. It's based on individual thinking. That's why the C-suite is only 3 people in a business of over 69,000 employees. So when we talk about like when you want to say all this or all that, people's first instinct is going to be to separate themselves from one another because you're taught that your journey is yours and yours alone. So I think that's definitely going to be that, and especially considering like the context, like what to be racist denotes when you say all white people are racist, which I don't disagree with at all. However, white people are going to try and remove themselves from that racism because they don't want to be associated with bad things, even though that's not what all white people are racist means.
Okay, so hold on. Give me a second. Brenda, I want you to pick up where Lady Peaches left off because I need to know. Because I had Jillian speak from the perspective of men, and I specifically had her do that for a reason. But Brenda, you said you are a white woman, and I would love to hear your thoughts on why white people, when they hear all white people are inherently racist, why does that solicit such a strong and negative response in some people?
I would think that they don't like the idea of, like I said, being, well, like she said, being, grouped in with a bunch of, other people, based on, that idea that, we're supposed to be individuals and we have our own mind and stuff like that. But it just depends on the person, I guess, whether they're how they react to it, because I've had friends who are like, I don't see color. I'm like, oh no, so, and then it like, like I said, in regards to my brother, like, he has the whole thing that he doesn't think racism exists in America because he's listened to Thomas Sowell. So, there's some extremes, and some, overlapping and that sort of thing. So I definitely understand where, some people could seem that, they don't like to be included in that, but if they don't recognize that they probably have something inherent because, there's this indoctrination that, white people, are supposed to be seen as, see themselves some way as an, superior.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot to say about that, especially when you have basically been told that you're the best all your life. You invented everything, you lead everything, all of those things. So I think there's a lot to that. Give me a second here, Frey. I want to come back to you. And Frey, I want to roll it forward, right? I want to roll it forward because I think a lot of people, they start to hear the all, right? And they can't make the separation between genuine discourse or pure ego, the actual hubris of the individual. But then when we start to talk about like the certain aspects that cause us to look at like the different factors that are created that make us say all, right? When we talk about like environmental issues that affect overwhelmingly marginalized communities. I know something you wanted to talk about, and I'm going to give it to you. I want to hear your position on locations matter, specifically speaking to things like food deserts or gentrification of areas, just those types of things that overwhelmingly affect marginalized communities?
Well, I think you get into the all versus ego within those aspects, because if you're, and this is going to tie into classism versus racism, right?
Okay, you got it.
If you're white, okay, and you grew up in a food desert, right? You're going to have certain connections that might be beyond your scope with regards to you might see a celebrity who has more than you, who happens to be in a marginalized community, but because they have more than you, you're going to think that racism might not exist, or you're going to think that because you're living among people who are in a marginalized community, that you have some type of bond with them or a connection with them, right? And you're not going to understand how you could be racist when all of your neighbors and your friends and everybody else you know had this, what you thought was the same experience, when really you were experiencing classism as a white person versus racism for a Black person, right? And on that point, Black does not equal poor. But that's what you think, because that's what you see.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said about that. When people say automatically equate those things, those two, there's a lot of I don't want to give too much away. I'll save that. Let me do this real quick because I forgot to do it earlier. Guys, we need to get the likes up to 60,000 likes. I'm going to reset the daily gift goal again. Keep resetting it to this little 1 cent goal. I'm sorry. Resetting to the little 1 cent goals, the smaller goals. If we can knock these out a couple of times, it will help push us out to the FYP. I'm going to do this. Let's do this one. Also, we need to tap the screen, guys. We got until 5 minutes after the hour to be at 60,000 likes. If we're not at 60,000 likes by 5 minutes after the hour, then we're going to go to sub only. Also, guys, we do have $249 left in our nightly donation goal. So if you enjoy the information, education, entertainment, please consider donating. Everything is accepted. Anything is appreciated. Santana Speaks 24, best way to support the live. Or if you're over on YouTube, what up, YouTube? What up, chat? Twitch.
Hey, Santana, I'm not sure what happened, but everything is gone. Like the chat and like being able to like tap. I don't know what happened.
I think that might just be you. I still see everything. Frey, do you still see everything?
Yeah, she may just need to either, she might have hit the screen where her comments are turned off, or she may need to swipe in and out.
Yeah, try swiping in and out, and then if it doesn't work, then you can drop and I'll bring you right back up. And then,
Okay.
But yeah, we I think everyone else see. What up, YouTube? What up, Twitch?
So I'll leave and come back. Thanks.
Oh, okay, perfect. If you're over on YouTube, make sure you're liking the stream. Make sure you're liking the stream if you're over on YouTube, and if you want to support while over on YouTube, you can do so by sending a YouTube super chat. All right, Lady P, I'm going to come to you first because I heard you say this, and I know you wanted to get into it. And since Frey took us there, I'll stay there. Racism versus classism. Why do people struggle so much with racism versus classism? And is it the answer to helping white people understand why they, quote unquote, feel like there's no such thing as white privilege in certain instances?
That's because they're racist. So,
whoa,
it's really just that simple. YT people are going to always struggle with the conversation of racism and classism, because hold on to classism is a way to try and like make yourself a bit more innocent in this topic. They love to say, oh, it's not. They love to say, oh, like, we're all oppressed. We all go through things, and it's us versus them. It's us versus the 1% and versus the man. Keep your eyes out for the man. Girl, please, the man is you. So what I want, the problem here is that that's why they struggle. Hold on. They're trying to give me a mute on this other panel. Anywho, so the man is the white T man as well. People just only want to hold themselves accountable. That's all that it really boils down to. It's really not that difficult of a concept to understand. White people are not impacted by racism. They're impacted by classism. That's it. That's all. There was something else. There was like, what was it that LBJ said? If you could convince like the white T
Don't be
man,
trying
like,
to steal my quote. You got it though.
did you say it? Oh, somebody said it.
I messed it. I said it earlier today. I messed it all up too.
Oh, you
I'm
said it
good.
today?
I'm good for jacking some stuff up. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he said you can convince like the poor white T man that he's better than the black man or something like that. It was one of them quotes, and
Yeah, if you can
that's what it
convince
applies
the
to.
if you can convince the poorest white man that he's better than the richest black man, then he won't notice you picking his pocket. Hell, if you give him someone to look down on, he'll empty his pockets for you.
Right, and I think it manifests. I think it definitely does manifest. It does manifest for real because you have poor white T people. You will have poor white T people that engage in all the white T supremacist rhetoric and whatnot, and they'll acknowledge the difference between racism and classism as well, up until it's time to hold them accountable. I think that that essentially overall, before I start turning into a word salad, essentially overall, if white T supremacists cared more about uplifting other white T people than being a detriment to black people, then classism wouldn't exist. So
Got it. Okay. Let me say this real quick. Rob, I see you in the box, but you're not coming up. Rob, come back when we do sparring. This is not a Rob conversation. I cannot entertain you on an actual late nights panel. Rob, you can stay in the chat, but you cannot come up. Nancy.
Yes, sir.
I would love to hear your thoughts on racism versus classism.
So I think I would like to say first of all is that I feel that most people, well, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know if YT realizes that all of the systems that we have grown up with in this country are literally based on racism. Just one alone, like credit score. Do they know why we have credit score? You know why? It was because once, actually, black people started to be able to buy property, they had to put something in place for, oh no, we can allow them to freaking get money from the bank that easily. We need to put, and that hurt YT as much as it did other people, but they don't care. As long as someone else is not better than them, they don't care to hurt too. And that's a big problem.
Why though, Nancy? Why is it that certain people are willing to harm themselves in order to actually make sure that they're still looked at as better than someone else?
Because they actually know deep down inside that that person is better than them, but they don't want to admit it. They know, for example, like black women right now are the most educated group. Right now, they literally have the most degrees, the most master degrees. But you know why they don't have, and they're not like the main people that are CEOs or they're in power? Is white men.
Yeah. You know, I disagree. I more so think that the reason why is because, kind of like what Buzzy said earlier, if they hold that mirror up instead of the window and they actually have to take a look back at themselves, then they have to realize that anyone else being on equal footing and then being in a better position than them means that their failures are on their own shoulders. If you can't blame someone for your failure, then who do you blame?
I kind of get it. I mean, the way I see it is that they had a 400-year head start, so they can't really blame it on anyone else but themselves.
Got it. Thank you, Nancy. Buzzy. Buzzy, you mind doing a little double duty for me?
I got time.
Okay, perfect. Buzzy, I want to hear your thoughts on classism versus racism. But then, can you tell me what you know about black, white, and blue spaces and how those correlate?
I think everything that could be said about classism versus racism has already been said by Lady P and Nancy. And that's really, it's a conflation on YT people or anybody that does not view themselves as a minority, because they feel as though suffering a lack of fiscal means is the equivalent to being racist. And that just could be a lack of understanding definitions and an effort to see themselves in the struggle so that they can't say, oh, I'm not better than you. I've experienced hardship too. But hardship versus degradation would be the conversation we need to have. There's a difference between suffering because, well, you had a 400-year head start and somehow the powers that be put you at the bottom of the totem pole, but still gave you more privilege than those that don't look like you, because people will give you the benefit of the doubt, wherein people don't give me the benefit of the doubt. People see me walking and they assume that I don't belong in those spaces, which ties us into the black, white, and blue spaces. That's the entire conversation to have. If you see me walking at the Mall of Millennia and I'm on the top floor in the left wing where there's Gucci and Louis Vuitton and Valentino and Prada, it's highly likely that you would assume that I don't belong there by the color of my skin, considering that majority of the people that are in that area do not look like me. Therefore, I must be displaced. I must be the problem. The other thing for hyper-awareness in that essay that I had mentioned earlier, right, in the essay titled Black Men in Public Spaces, there's a hyper-awareness that comes with being Black, and really a hyper-awareness that's associated with being a minority in this country. I can't speak on other minorities, but in that experience, the hyper-awareness of being Black, you're taught as kids to not touch anything you don't intend on buying, to make sure your hands are visible. If you don't need to carry your person, you don't carry your person, you don't bring backpacks. Anything that people can use to target you to say you did something that you in fact did not do. You take these precautions to make yourself more palatable, to make yourself less of an easy target. And we're talking about this currently in 2025, but the essay that I'm referring to was written in 1987. And he started this essay, the first sentence of this essay says, my first victim was a white woman in an affluent area in Chicago. He stated that he was walking down the sidewalk at night and this woman was in front of him. She took a wary glance in his direction and she started quickening her footsteps as if to run away from him. That his presence, in this essay, he noted that he felt that his presence was the equivalent to someone thinking they had encountered a mugger, a robber, or worse. And in that, he stated that the way he felt about this made him feel isolated. There's an isolationism that comes with being a minority in this country. And in that isolationism, it expands the racism that is in the minorities. One thing we know for sure as Black people, and this can be fact checked easily, is that every country has a derogatory term or a racist term towards people who have skin like mine.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that be because of colorism or pure hatred would be different conversations depending on where you are, right? Because in Eastern countries, in Eastern countries, the more fair you are treated better. You're seen as more of a beauty standard. So for people that have skin like mine, they assimilate us with being dirty off the bat, right? And that, I would say, is rooted in ignorance. But I am Black, living this existence.
Yeah.
So classism versus racism and the conversation of spaces has to go together. The hyper awareness associated with being Black gives you the difference between a white person that grew up in a trailer park and a Black person that is targeted for their existence.
Yes. Let me do this real quick. Guys, we got 3 minutes to get to 60,000 likes. We're at almost 47,000 likes. Keep tapping the screen. Let's get it up to 60,000 likes. If we're not at 60,000 likes in 3 minutes, we're going to sub only. Nancy. So Buzzy said something really important, right? Buzzy talked about how, the difference between racism and classism, and speaking to the heart of racism, and then even more so speaking on spaces, right? White spaces, Black spaces, and blue spaces. And for anyone wondering specifically what's blue spaces, or I guess to be a little bit more specific, it's called blue space racism. And it says here, just to give a baseline quote unquote definition, it's how law enforcement, blue, controls and criminalize Black and brown movement in public spaces, right? And so there's different places that we can talk about, whether streets, parks, schools, malls, blah 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 blah. But there's systematic tactics that they actually take to target those Black and brown people in the different areas. And then there's also ways that they actually institute they enact on this type of blue space racism, specifically if you want to look into like the school to prison pipeline, right? But I say all that to say, Nancy, you mentioned earlier that I said, "What's your race?" And you said that you're brown.
Well, Hispanic. Sorry.
Well, yeah, that's not a race. Nancy, what is race?
I know where you're going with this one because I always have a hard time with this on paper too, because they only give you the option to put white on it for me.
Well, they give you more than white, but what do you put on the paper?
But yeah, because I put white, and that's why I know what you mean. Like there's Black, I've seen Black, white. I can't think of the other options, but I know when I'm filling stuff out, there's not one that I 100% identify with, but I end up putting white.
Got it. Okay, so when you put white, right? So when you're putting those documentations, that's what you put. Now, when you are in certain areas, let's say, Nancy, let's say that you go to a grocery store, right? And not even a grocery store. Buzzy mentioned being at the mall or whatever, and you're walking past Gucci and Prada and whatever the like fancy stuff is. And Nancy, let's say that you are in that same area that Buzzy was just in. What happens when you walk through that area? Like, what goes through your head, and what do you see around you in those type of areas?
I'm trying to think. I honestly do not see, when I walk into those kinds of spaces, I do not see much of a difference.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
That's just from my
Do you know
personal
why?
experience. I would like to say maybe because maybe they associate me with more with white passing, but I don't know.
So race is based off of phenotypical characteristics, and specifically race was created as a tool of oppression, directly relating to the patriarchal system, right? And so when you talk about the different things as far as like your features, right, your hair texture, all of those different things, that's what you appear as, right? You appear as a white passing woman, and so you not noticing that when you go into that same space that Buzzy was just talking about, that's white space racism, right? Because specifically speaking to white space racism,
Yeah.
it's an actual area where white are the majority. They don't have a normal sense of having minorities around, and even when there are even when they are minorities around, then certain things happen to set minorities in those areas, right? A lot of minorities deal with different things like microaggressions, which is what I was just speaking to, how you can be in those areas and you don't see any difference, but Buzzy, she gets looks. She gets people following her, or just those type of things. So that's something I want to speak to. Lady P.
Okay. I got me, myself, and I. Okay. So, Life, you were saying that you are a YT passing person. Let me turn this volume down, 'cause I don't know why I can still hear this stuff over here. So you were saying that you are YT passing. I find that to be kind of funny. If you are walking through life and everybody is looking at you as a YT person and you're white, sorry. No passing, no presenting, just YT. Okay, just go ahead and cut it dry. Just take your YT card and be a YT woman. The reason why you won't see any differences between you and them, between you and the black people in the room, is because you're a YT person. You have the privilege to not see those differences. It just is that. And just so that way y'all know, Hispanic is not a race. Hispanic is an ethnic group. And per the census, the Office of Management and Budget did make an update to their to their 1997 standards as of March 2024, and the census will update it on the next census in 2030. The race and ethnic question, the race and ethnicity question will be simplified into one question, and it will have 6 races. There will be 7 options though, because it will be race/ethnicity. Hispanic will be the ethnic group, and the races will be Black, White, Asian Pacific Islander, Native American, or Middle Eastern, North African, which is long for MENA. So Hispanic will still not be a race. Still won't be a race. It's not a race. It's not what that is. I think this is a part of that race to innocence that white people do. Like, same thing with classism. They cling on to whatever form of oppression that they may have, because a Hispanic white person will still experience xenophobia because white English people conquer what is now America, and Spaniards do have a different phenotypical presentation, but they're still very visibly a European, and they will benefit from whiteness before anything else. But English people can see those differences, so that's why they don't really align themselves with English American people and the construct of whiteness. But we go to Latin America, in them countries, baby, you benefiting. So it just is that.
Is that the different levels of intersectionality? Yeah, it is. Thank you, Lady P. Nancy, before I move off of that, I would love to hear your thoughts on not only what I just talked about, but the additional information that Lady P just covered with you.
No, yeah, I actually do really completely agree. Like, I feel like a lot of people like myself that, um, for example, were born in America, but not in the U.S. So, like me, I was born in Mexico, um, and I did grow up around. Like, I have cousins that are like very like like half of my family has like half German blood in them. They're blonde, blue eyed, like very you know white looking. On the side of my family, I'm on the darker side, right? And if you ask me like, oh, like between like a color of like white and black and brown, what are you? I would say brown. That's the first thing that I would say. But do I feel like a lot of people like myself align themselves more with white tea, whether they want to admit it or not? Yes, they do.
So, follow-up question for you, Nancy. Why do you have such an aversion to like when someone says, what are you? Why do you say brown? All right, because in no offense, but I'm looking at your profile here, and like I would, if without hearing you speak, I would have just thought that you were just a normal white woman. So why are you, I guess, and Lady P kind of spoke to the clinging on to certain aspects, but why are you avert to saying that you are white instead of saying brown?
I think in my daily life, I refer to myself as brown, most like white. I think at the time when you asked me the question, I thought I had to pick between what to identify myself closer to, I guess. But when people ask me in my regular life every single day, all the time, I think that my skin color is brown.
Okay. All right. Madam. Oh, go ahead, Buzzy.
So I was gonna say, I don't know. Being in Florida, I always say that there's a difference between Florida and La Florida, right? Because in Florida, there are heavily influenced communities by Latin culture in different aspects, right? And I've noticed that with Puerto Ricans, they will say Afro-Latina, like for how they are identifying, and they also will say brown instead of white or white passing. They will just say brown. I've wondered, and I'm asking Nancy this, I've wondered if it's the link to your culture.
That's that I didn't want to put words in her mouth, but anyway, Nancy, floor is yours.
That the link to my culture because like are you referring to like being Mexican and comparing that to the brown?
The link to your heritage being Mexican, like, is that why you cling on to saying brown instead of saying white? Because I've noticed that in other people that I've met, there is a clinging on to the heritage rather than the appearance. I was wondering.
That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that, and I guess I never really put it together. But you might be right, because I do feel like if, like myself, like if I go and I say, oh, I feel like I'm more whitey looking or something like that, I feel like I am not representing myself correctly because of maybe I'm born in Mexico and the way that I grew up. And I feel like that doesn't identify unless I say, I don't identify as white, I say brown. But is that the incorrect term to say?
I was curious about it because, like, I know, so specifically speaking about my experience with people that are Puerto Rican, not everybody that is Puerto Rican will say that they are Afro-Latina, because not everybody that is Puerto Rican is Afro-Latina. Like, that's the reality of the situation. A lot of them do not identify with that, will not use that language. And they have their reasons for that. And because I am not Puerto Rican, I just don't even talk to them about it specifically because it requires a lot of, there's a lot there to unpack.
Mhm.
So that's why I was asking.
Yeah,
I
I
was
think you're
wondering if I ask a question about that too. I'm wondering if it might be like a subconscious defense mechanism against your average white American English speaking person who, because I have heard people say things like, she's not white, he's not white. Once they hear someone talk or once they, so I'm wondering if it might be like on a subconscious level, like, well, I'm not one of them. So I don't know if that.
Lady P. Lady P has the answer.
It is rooted in racism. It is rooted in the erasure of Black people in Mexico, is specifically in regards to that. So first and foremost, I just want to say she don't look like a white woman to me. Okay, this woman looks indigenous, but you want to claim to be white, that's you, that's fine. I'm not gonna make you not be white. That's you. But anywho, in regards to when people get over here and they say that they're racist Mexican or they claim stuff like that, or they do anything or like use like any sort of ethnic group to dissociate themselves from being YT, I find it to be kind of wild. YT people come in various different backgrounds and different cultures. YT people got different languages. They got French, they got English, they got Spanish, they got all kind of stuff to do. They got all kind of fun stuff to do. So like, I just find it to be kind of crazy when you try to use anything other than being English to disassociate yourself from whiteness, especially specifically Mexican. Mexico was one of the biggest colonizer countries in the Western Hemisphere. Like before it became Mexico and it was New Spain. Yeah, we don't forget that. Mexico played a major role in the erasure of Black people in the Underground Railroads when they would deceive African American people from going from thinking that they'll be off to freedom, but they would just be continuing to work the same labor but with a free status in a different country where people spoke a different language that they didn't understand. Yeah, that happened. That was something that happened in Mexico. The concept of whiteness exists in Mexico. So I really struggle to understand how Mexican people of any race besides Black will come to America and then say that their race is Mexican. This stems from mestizaje. In my opinion, it stems from when they tried to breed the Black and indigenous out of the people that were in Mexico, and wanted to turn mestizo people into the true Mexican, and wanted to wipe away the issue of racism by getting rid of race and making the true Mexican race, which was mestizo. And that would be mestizaje. So I think that's what that is rooted in. I don't think it's rooted in anything other than that. And that's why they so closely identify with the Mexican being a race. This also took place, what's it called? Mejor de la Raza, which took place throughout Latin America in different countries. You see it reflected as well. That's why a lot of people who are not Black identify a lot with their ethnic group, internationality, rather than an actual race. It's erasure.
Yeah, I completely agree. In the sense that it is that separation. I'm not gonna try to top what you said. The one thing that I do kind of want to call out though, and it was kind of a quick comment at the beginning. I don't know. I would just say the whole aspect of look and like looking like they're indigenous. I think that's a dangerous, slippery slope, just because of the history of indigenous people in the country, and how certain white people have appropriated indigenous people, and just as a whole thing. That's the only thing I would caution with that point.
With what we're looking at indigenous?
Yeah.
I mean, if we know the race is based on how you phenotypically look, and you look like that you are of the original peoples of the Americas, then and you have cultural ties to those people, then there would be the racial classification for that.
You also have
My-
to take into account people's understanding of their heritage. So a better way to explain what I was saying about Puerto Ricans and living in Florida, right? There are some Puerto Ricans that don't identify as Afro-Latino, but they identify as Taino. Like there is everybody's understanding and what they were taught about their lineage is different, and everybody clings to different portions of it because it makes them feel safe, or it is a direct connection to the people that taught them these things. And because of this, there is a lot in unpacking, but more so than the perspective of how they look, it is about their attachment to their heritage and what they understand to be true.
Yeah.
But I don't see how that would make somebody like not indigenous though.
Well,
if she's
and again, let me jump in. Again, my whole point of saying that is not necessarily speaking to the phenotypical characteristics, because I understand what you're saying logically. I always caution that, just because, again, we understand that the appropriation of indigenous people by white people, being honest, throughout our country's history has been a very dangerous thing, and how they try to weaponize that aspect and say, well, I'm 1/8, 1/16, da 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 da. So not necessarily just speaking to this instance, but the entire thought process behind that as a whole. It can be kind of dangerous to lend that cover of saying that certain people can just quote unquote look indigenous without having any like real connections, ties, any type of any type of connections when it comes to like their tribes or anything like that. Because I know for a fact there's a lot of people come up here and say, well, I'm Cherokee or da 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 da, and like that's a whole thing.
Right.
So that's the only point I'm making.
I mean, I don't disagree with with the appropriation of indigenous people at the hands of white people, but these are very obviously white people that are doing the appropriation and engaging in blood quantum in order to do so. Your phenotypical presentation and cultural ties that's not blood quantum. So and that's where the appropriation is coming from. So if we have somebody that is phenotypically presenting as an indigenous person, and they walk outside and nobody's seeing a white person, and they're not benefiting from the privilege of being a white person because they can't identify with these white people, then I don't like she's aligning herself with indigenous. Like in America, indigenous is the classification of having of looking like the original peoples and having those cultural ties. Outside of America, like in the Dominican Republic, to identify with indigenous, you don't have to have a tribal stat or something like that to identify with being Taino. So it's not necessarily the same in these other places. And we know that with the erasure of indigenous people, they wanted to literally breed out the look of indigenous. So I think it's important to recognize indigenous when we see it, especially in the context of Mexican people, because these people were attempted to be erased from Mexican culture.
Yeah, no, listen, I think that you and I definitely align on that. It's just, yeah, you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to give certain people that coverage. All right. I do want to roll it forward and keep it moving, because there's a couple of people who haven't had an opportunity to actually speak, and I want to get a little bit more back into where we were. Also, guys, keep tapping the screen. Let's go ahead and get the likes up to 100,000 likes. We do still have $249 left in our nightly donation goal. So if you would like to actually support the live, you can do so. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all the pay links in the link tree in the bio. Santana Speaks 24, best way to support the live. You can also support over on YouTube with a YouTube super chat. I want to come to Frey, because Frey, I have not heard from you in a while. And Frey, I know we kind of went off on a couple of different areas, but I want to kind of recenter it right to spaces, right? And talking about black spaces, white spaces, and blue spaces. Frey, understanding blue spaces is more so specifically how black and brown people are policed in certain public spaces. What are your thoughts on the discrepancies between the policing of black and brown people in those public areas? And is there any like blue space laws that has stuck out to you that is something that people would either should be aware of, or something that's been really harmful?
Okay. First, can I mention a book real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so this goes to Chris. Chris, the book is called and Chicanas and Chicanos in Contemporary Society. It's a second edition. I'm sure you can find a better edition by Roberto M. de Anda. And so the book gives history of Mexican culture, Chicanos and Chicanas, meaning people who are born in USA, who have that connection. Can I say one other thing? And then if you don't mind rephrasing your question again, and
Sure.
then I can answer. The reason Mexican people specifically have a hard time with picking their race, one has to do with how Mexico classifies people, because they don't have race in Mexico. There is a point of colorism. However, everyone in Mexico, born in Mexico, is Mexican unless they immigrated in from a different country like Germany or France or somewhere else, right? But they would still be just like a Jamaican American, right? That person was from Jamaica, but they're American, right? So that person is from Germany, but they're Mexican. But true Mexican people who are a part of the culture and their family has been there forever, going back centuries and centuries and centuries. When they come to USA, it is extremely hard for them to identify a single race, because many of their family members may look one way or another way due to different colonizations. And then you might have phenotypes from different races, right? You're not going to have one specific phenotype. And then again, in USA, Mexicans cannot check the box indigenous. They're not allowed to, because when you look at the census, it will say indigenous, and then it will ask which specific approved tribe you are from in the United States. Okay. So that's the reason why. Whereas like a Cuban would have a different rule set versus a Mexican. It's just because of how the United States has dealt with Mexicans. And between the history of the United States and Mexico, it is very complicated. It is a very long history, but if you get that book or you rent it from your library somewhere, you can see the history and understand it. And then as part of that, you would have to actually experience Mexican culture in order to understand why, even though Mexicans in USA do benefit from their closeness to whiteness, that they do tend to stray away from saying that they are white, not dependent on their skin color or anything. It's so ingrained in culture and what it means to be Mexican, and the fact that white people like me, we don't accept them. Even if they can put that check on the box in USA, we don't accept them. They're not accepted as white. There's just, it's a whole lot, but I will answer your question because I know where we're going off that topic. But or just rephrase it for me, just the last part, what you said, so that I can answer it correctly.
Yeah, the last part was just basically blue space laws and how they are carried out throughout any common blue space laws and how they are enacted when governing over white people versus Black people in certain spaces.
So I would look at, I'm only talking about Texas because I don't represent the whole South of America, South of the United States, right? And the North also, but I'm specifically talking about Texas. I would talk about, you look at, you could go as far as Jim Crow laws, Black codes, and stuff like that, and go as early as redlining, credit scores, like Nancy was talking about. You could go even today, and you look at I'm gonna mention Biden in a minute, but anyways, you can look at how things are created. Like, for instance, when I say Texas, I'm talking about infrastructure, football stadiums, lakes, man-made lakes, and trees, how trees are planted and stuff like that. So what I mean is, with infrastructure, highways are often going through Black and brown communities, right? Lakes are often dug up. Land is bought from people or taken from people through an eminent domain, right? And these are ways that Black people specifically are segregated away from society. Because if you take someone's land and put a highway in front of it, and you've made laws like that people can't swim in certain places, that people can't drive, like gosh, I'm going in circles and I'm so sorry. But
No,
I'm trying to get my thoughts. I'm so sorry. For example, right? Black people were not given the access to driver's license right away, right? So then you build a highway. How the F are they going to get to the library that's on the other side of town when there's a highway right in between there, right? They can't safely get access to food. They can't safely get access to things that they need, education, libraries, and every other thing that white people can have access to, right? If you take up their housing and you build a lake and then you segregate them and say, you can't swim here, how did they get to enjoy life like other people? And the reason I said I was going to mention Biden is because of his infrastructure bill that he, I think it was like 40 billion or something like that. I would have to go look at the thing, but changing infrastructure would be the only way to deal with that. You said a specific law. I cannot come up with one right now.
Well, let me hop in for a second, because I know we went a little bit further than where I was hoping to go, because you're absolutely right. I mean, you can even take a look at more specifically when talking about locations, and you talk about the different aspects of how different areas were created when it comes to infrastructure, specifically how highways were built to separate certain people. And there's certain areas, I would have to pull up the specific, but I know there was an area where it was made where buses couldn't get to the Black areas, and so they couldn't get in and out. So I know that was a thing. But rolling it back for just a half a second, speaking to the actual blue space laws, I'm thinking more of things like stop and frisk, right? I mean, understanding how Black people are in certain areas, and there's certain standards that overly affect Black people in those areas versus how they are actually policed, or how white people are policed in those areas as well. So that's more what I was thinking as far as when it comes to blue space laws.
Well, I would say that when you're talking about that, right, there's a certain areas in my city that you're going to have either more police presence or less police presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear in my street constantly, well, one thing, there's like a fire station down the street,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to see police coming down the streets more. We had a whole raid at the neighbor's house the other day, and the police broke their windows and did all this crazy stuff. There was drones flying everywhere, and the people weren't even home, right? Yeah. Just ridiculousness, right? Stop and frisk affects white people when they live in the same areas that are being policed specifically for Black people. It only affects them, and that goes back to that classism, but it only affects them when they are in those areas, right? You're not going to see white people be targeted at the Galleria Mall, which is a very high class mall in Dallas. It has all the Gucci stores, and it has a skating rink inside, and it has restaurants that don't have prices on the menu, right? Black people shop there, but Black people are going to be targeted and white people aren't, versus going to Mesquite, Texas, that doesn't have a busing system, right? So those areas are going to be targeted because there's a higher level of Black people in them, and the white people that happen to live there might feel that they're also being targeted when they're actually not.
Right.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Lady P, I know you want to respond. I'm gonna give you the floor for a moment, but I also want to go to Madam as well, and I want to get Brenda back in on the conversation. But Lady P, the floor is yours.
I had this hand up. I forgot what I was even finna respond to.
We want to talk about blue space racism. Can you break that one down a little bit more for me?
Blue space racism. You said that blue space racism was about the over policing of people.
Well, I said that's a aspect of it. The way that Black and brown people are policed in public spaces versus white people, and specifically talking about like certain things that impact us at a higher clip, like stop and frisk, and why that was so dangerous. Because I know that was a whole talking point with this past election, and they wanted to institute it like nationwide, and like how horrible that would be for us. And I was just using that as a point of
I mean, that's okay. That's why I did hear him also speak on stop and frisk. So as far as stop and frisk goes, white people are still not really impacted by stop and frisk when they're in proximity to Black people in Black neighborhoods. It doesn't really make much of a difference. Over 90% of people impacted by stop and frisk are Black. So I don't really know I don't really see how white people are impacted by that, regardless of their social status. That's just racism. In regards to the over policing of Black people, I think I had to do like some more information about. I like do like some more research about like the numbers on that, but we know that Black people are like more likely to get stopped at a traffic stop, and I think that like just like something else I would just would have thought about was how redlining will play a role into that. How redlining creates distance between the Black people's houses and their jobs, increasing the commute, and if we know that Black people are more likely to be stopped on the basis of being Black than any other race, then it would also create more danger for Black people getting to and from work just outside of the economic impact that it has on Black people. It's the safety that we have on the highways. We're like 4 times more likely to be stopped at a traffic stop, more likely to be searched, regardless of car color. even though we're less likely to be carrying contraband than our YT counterparts. So, and we in the top 3 crimes that we're convicted for is drug crimes, unalignment, and SA. So, I think so. With that being like a top crime, that's that would kind of like speak to the dangers of the over policing of Black people in public spaces. Jesus said something about Mexican people not being able to fill out indigenous. Oh, I forgot what she said about that, so I'm not gonna respond to that.
Yeah, no. All right, yeah. I appreciate it. I think there's a lot to be said about that, and when it comes to how stop and frisk specifically does not impact. It is definitely
pronouns. My bad.
I'm sorry.
What's called? I didn't realize that first pronouns were he, him.
Yeah, absolutely. Lady P, what is your pronouns? And I'm sorry, I was misgendering you. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I just got told that on the back end. I apologize. So I want to roll this forward a little bit more and dig a little bit deeper. Lady P, when we talk about Black spaces, blue spaces, and then I'm gonna come to Madam after this, but speaking on Black spaces, there tends to be an actual like inflection point between all of these things when it comes to Black spaces and how we related to or connected to food deserts / food swamps. They are often areas that are separated with the understanding of classism as well, not just racism. So why is it that the spaces that Black people are often, I don't want to say relegated to, but historically throughout the history of the country, they've been kind of pushed off to, like, the difference between the suburbs versus the quote unquote projects, right? When they were created, like, why has that been such a thing? And then how is that shifting now with this massive push of gentrification?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think so you're asking like why we were like pushed out to those areas. It's because of redlining. Redlining will always be the second largest tool but behind slavery. So redlining was the literal purpose of drawing red lines over certain neighborhoods so that way there would be no Blacks, just whiteys, and that was it. That's all. Black people, knowing that Black people were coming out of slavery, and it would be free people from slavery, and we're not given reparations for slavery. We had to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and that's just not as easy in a capitalistic society. That people like to make it out to seem. So some of us did not have the funds, did not have the means to get houses in certain areas, and those that did were redlined because of the strength of being Black. So it was very difficult for us to get houses in certain areas, just because of racism, and that would leave us to the rinky-dinky joints, the joints that are built on soft soil, the joints that are built on bricks, all kind of rinky-dinky houses in rinky-dinky areas because they think that that's all they were worth because they think they were rinky-dinky. So that is. And these are our grandparents that I'm talking about here. So these are our grandparents, our great grandparents. These are all those people that we're speaking of, and our grandparents raised us. They many of us grow up raised in those homes, and those homes are in areas where people don't have the money to pay their low property taxes and in those that do, the property taxes are so small you can only disperse it so much. So we're in these ranky-danky schools, not raising kids in an environment that fosters or promotes education for real, and that's going to impact the type of jobs that we get, the type of things that we see now, and it's going to impact us today. So when we talk about gentrification is going to ruin that. Why? because you are now increasing the cost of living in the area for these people that are already poor because they are relegated to areas because they were poor and they were forced to stay poor because of their environment that they grew up in, and now they suddenly had to pay these erroneous amounts of money just to go and get groceries around them. You put a you put a kava in the middle of the hood, and then take out all the items from Walmart, and then you wonder why people can't afford food. That's a problem. So like when we talk about like the experiences and how gentrification is going to impact these Black people, these grandparents are still living. Like they're on Medicare and Medicaid. They are on fixed incomes. So we can't they can't afford these volatile changes, and that's terrible. And there was one last thing I wanted to speak on. Oh yes, so how like we move forward like with the changes here. I do think that we can like move forward from it though. It's doable. We've seen the town of Evansville, Illinois, which is the first town to pass reparations for redlining, and they're helping people rebuild their homes, and they're helping them with money for a new home as well, or just paying them out some money. So there's ways to do it. There's ways to fix the problem, but white people are racist and won't fix it. So,
all right. W's in the chat for Brenda. Brenda sent a $19 donation to go towards the nightly donation goal. That means that now we only have $230 left in the nightly donation goal. So guys, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all the pay links are in the link tree in the bio. Santana Speaks 24, best way to support the live. Everything is accepted. Anything is appreciated. I want to go over to Madam. Madam, I would love to hear your thoughts on the actual premise behind, more so thinking about the areas that end up being affected by food deserts or food swamps, and then rolling it forward to how some of those same areas that were affected are now being specifically targeted by gentrification.
Can you just remind me again what food desert versus food swamp is? Because that's like a new like way of wording something for me. I've never heard it referred to that way. Then I got you.
Yeah, I think that there's not really a Lady P, keep me honest. I think there's just the actual specific terminology, not necessarily a separation of the two, but just the way that people refer to it. Lady P, am I off base with that one?
I'm not familiar with food swamps. I know about food deserts.
Yeah, I think it's just the overall terminology, the difference in the terminology, because I've heard both of them, but then I've heard, give me a minute, I can get the reasoning behind it, because I think it's more so like the way that it's actually, sorry?
I just Googled it because I'd never heard of either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just
a food swamp is a geographical area with adequate access to healthy food, retail, but that also features an overabundance of exposure to less healthy foods and beverages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some researchers have identified food mirages as a barrier for individuals experiencing low incomes to access healthy, affordable food in their neighborhood.
Yeah, it's different forms, and food swamps are like convenience stores and a bunch of unhealthy foods, things like that. So it's more so the overall access to either the lack of access to food or the proximity of the food that is available in certain areas, right? You get into these areas where there's more McDonald's, there's gas stations with a bunch of snacks. You can't really get access to like fresh
Farmers
produce,
markets.
things like that. Yeah.
Okay. So I live on the coast of Mississippi, so unfortunately, like we have like actual farmers markets as well as like an abundance of places with snacks and junk food as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the question you're asking me is like, what do I feel like is the difference between them, or like?
Just speaking to the areas and why those areas tend to be closely related to I don't necessarily want to call it lower income, but a lot of Black areas are affected by those either food deserts or food swamps. And then
Okay, I got
the
you.
shift that has occurred with the overall gentrification for certain areas where they go from being on one end of the spectrum to the other end.
Okay, so I got you now. I can answer that easily. Thank you for clarifying that because
Mhm.
I'm learning and I'm loving this today, honestly. So I feel like the reason why it's done is generally because, first of all, like where I live, the area on the coast, it's not really like that. We have a wide variety, but as you go like further up in Mississippi, you get like the more rural areas where they don't have like Walmarts, they don't have McDonald's, Sonics, things like that. They don't have farmer markets. It's just like gas station and Dollar General is all they have. And I feel like the reason why they do that is because, again, it's no secret, Mississippi has a very low wage. Like only the privileged people who like move from, well, I don't want to say privileged because that kind of sounds messed up to say it that way, but the people who have come from better opportunities that are already have a head start generally move to our state. Like people who were born and raised in like Mississippi, a lot of them are like they're subject to the povertized areas where like they're making just enough where like they buy like the junk food. They buy like it's literally like I said, gas stations with like fried foods in it and no like farmer markets and stuff. And I feel like they do that down here because it creates like I'm trying to think of because again, I don't want to offend people when I'm trying to say the things the way I'm saying it.
Yeah, I think what we're really talking about is overall, those people who have less access tend to end up being put around certain areas, or even when you talk about like lower income areas, and if they do build anything new, right? They don't necessarily build the healthier options. They more so stick to building like again fast food restaurants, right? And you limit it. I'll give you a great example. This is something that until I learned about like food deserts, right? I didn't necessarily understand how that was impacted. And so the area that I grew up in and my mother currently still lives in, right? There were a couple of grocery stores that were around her area, and she could go and people could actually walk to the store and they could buy fresh produce, they could buy fresh meat, they could get all of those things. And one by one, they started to close down those grocery stores, right? And even more because there was a black area, right? A majority black area. Once they closed that down, the closest grocery store was, I want to say, about 10 minutes away, and that was driving, right? So people no longer had the ability to walk to the grocery store because the grocery stores had closed down. They no longer had that same level of access to fresh food, fresh produce, fresh meat, those types of things. And so they became more reliant on the fast food industry within that area. Now, roll that forward, we understand the effects that that type of diet and things like that have on the people, and even more the community of said people. And so when you actually put people in that situation where they only have access to either unhealthy food or a lack of food, then you create additional health issues. So it's all connected, and I think Lady P put it in the chat, but I agree. It's definitely classism as well, but it's also a form of racism. And so it's something that is overwhelmingly impacted by, or I'm sorry, impacts Black and Brown communities, just due to the different intersectional points as far as what we've been talking about. But Madam, what do you know about gentrification?
From what I understand, it's basically the best way I know to use as an example is like it's like taking like for instance, like you have a black neighborhood, and what happens is like basically like these bigger businesses are trying to capitalize and come in and build buildings and kind of like raise like the property values and stuff like that to bring in more of a particular type of crowd that aren't the brown people and stuff like that. And from what I understand, to like kind of either incentively push them out and create like an area where they're either disadvantaged and out of the area completely, or just basically cut out the area of the targeted groups that they don't want in that area is how I understand it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, would anyone else on the panel like to take a swing at that one? I know Lady P can as well, but Brenda, Jillian.
I could actually take a swing at this one.
Okay.
I'd love to hear it.
So I've heard the term before, but I just had to look it up to make sure I was on the right page. So I have a really good analogy for it. I don't have much experience in large cities. But a good analogy was I used to live up in Sandpoint, Idaho, which was very, very poor, very, it's a destination place. So people come there to visit, but not very many people lived there year round. Rents were low, cost of buying a house was low, all of that. And then after C-19, when people from larger areas were trying to go to smaller areas like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, people with a ton of money came in and offered cash for like twice what houses were on the market for. And it pushed out everyone that was born and raised in Sandpoint that didn't already own their own place. So I feel like that's... it's an analogy for what happens in the cities from, the poorer neighborhoods when, whether it's large corporations or just wealthy families, whatever, come in and they take over these apartment buildings and they make them all nice and fancy, but now rent's going to be 3 times.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, there's definitely a lot more to it as well, but I think that we see the impact of gentrification more so in the sense of being able to purchase these historically, and not historically, but the areas where there's more rent control, areas that have more history, and you see a lot of that happening in places like New York, right? Specifically, I think it's Brownsville, but there's certain areas that have been predominantly black or even lower rates for the cost of living. And then, yes, you're right. You get those either middle class, upper class corporations, those they come in and they actually buy up the area and then they sell the area to people that can afford it. And then not only do they do that, that pushes out those people that have been stalwarts of that community, right? And so it uproots them. And what tends to happen is a lot of people who grew up in that area, not only can they no longer live in the area anymore because of gentrification, they can't afford to live there, but then a funny thing happens once those people start to buy up that area, then the area starts to increase in value. So of course it actually moves on from certain things like being, a food desert or a food swamp, and they start to try to improve those areas. So that, Brenda, I would love to know if you know the connection between gentrification and opportunity zones.
An opportunity zone. I just want to make sure.
I'm sorry, you cut out. I couldn't hear you.
What is an opportunity zone exactly?
Never mind. I don't want you to do that one then. Hold tight for me a second.
No,
no, you're good. You're good. Lady P, can you tell them the connection between gentrification and opportunity zones? Because for some reason, the certain people like to tout opportunity zones as such a great thing for, low income communities and Black people.
It ain't. There's really not much of a difference besides like the government's involvement in the two per se. Because because it's both a part of urban development, quote unquote, and so what it does was like opportunity zones, to my knowledge, so opportunity zones, to my knowledge, are like there are places that are like already on the way to gentrification, and the government starts to like incentivize people to continue to build in that area. That's how I know about opportunity zones. But they really don't do nothing but like propel gentrification, because at the end of the day, like you still have white people buying out property, like business property and residential property, and making it hard for people to live there. I don't really think it's much of a difference, but I don't really speak on opportunity zones a lot, so that's my pretty much knowledge about it.
Yeah, and it's one thing because and maybe it's because I do so much political debates. It's something that was a stalwart of the Trump administration, and they talked about how you're incentivizing business in these lower income areas, and you're getting people to come in and open up warehouses or manufacturing plants and da 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 da. But to your point, the only thing that it does is it actually it directly speeds up the process of gentrification, because once you start to actually have these different industries come into these certain lower income areas, then it actually they start to build up those areas, and you tend to see the people that can afford to live in those areas or get paid really well from those jobs, because they don't necessarily hire the people that live in the area. That's the premise behind it. They're supposed to hire the people in the area, but they start to build up the area so much that even if they hire those people in that area, that they don't make enough to actually continue to live in the area as it grows. So it forces people out of that area when it was supposed to promote growth within that community. So opportunity zones is it's a tool for gentrification. We got
That's
someone.
real.
Yeah. Coach Polly, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. I don't come up on a whole lot of panels. I am, more on the progressive side of things, but when it comes to gentrification and and how that affects local people, I'm uniquely, I guess, affected by it. I'm
Floor is
from
yours.
Hawaii, and I was priced out of paradise, and I moved to the mainland when I was like 12.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a little kid, I thought, oh, this is so cool. I get to move to Texas, and I get to explore the world, and leave this island, which is paradise, which is like, everything that everybody wants. But the reality was that we couldn't live there anymore. I remember when I was like 9 or 10 years old, we were getting evicted from our apartment, and my mom was crying in the bathroom. I thought she was crying because previously I had run into her with the shopping cart that we were moving, that we were using to move all of our things, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like 7 or 8 years old at the time, and I thought it was because of me. I thought, like I had hurt my mom, and like that's why she was crying. And then I eventually, she opened the bathroom. At the time she may have been 25 or so, and she was like, no, like I wasn't, like it's nothing you did. My first name is Terrell, so my nickname growing up was Relly. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no, Relly, it's nothing that you did, blah blah. It's just, she had blamed herself for the predicament that we were in. I'm, again, a very young child. I didn't know what predicament meant. So I asked her, I was like, what is predicament? And she's like, well, it just means unfortunate situation, basically, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And from that point on, we bounced around between a few apartments and a few different, like, extra properties that we may or may not have known, like the people who owned the rest of it, and they just let us stay there for like a few $100s a month and whatnot. And then eventually got to the point where like we just had to leave. And so yeah, we ended up moving to to Texas. And again, at the time, I thought, oh, this is cool. I get to leave. I get to explore. And then as I got older and as I noticed more of what was going on, I realized, oh, like we just didn't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And now as an adult, like not too long ago, I realized, oh, okay, like now it's actually reality. I can probably figure out a way to move my family back home. And
let me hop in there for a second. Did you take, well, I don't know if you have like the perspective of then and now, right, as far as costs, but did you look into how much it would cost?
Currently, or when I was a child?
Currently.
Yeah, so currently it would be at the cheapest like 30,000. More expensive if I were to put down 20% on a home back home right now, I would have to put down about 100 to 200 grand to buy a home.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Yeah.
And that's not including moving the cars, moving our stuff, our animals. We have 3 cats and a dog, and per would be about $2,000.
So I guess with having that prior knowledge, right, and not necessarily in the moment when you were younger, but now, what do you think about gentrification as a whole, right? Because like I personally, I have nothing against people moving in and out of communities and communities being made better and blah blah blah. But I think there's something to be said when there's a systematic approach to specifically target certain communities that can be listed as prime real estate, and then following a plan to get all the people out so they can actually utilize that area.
Yeah, I think that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So I personally have been really interested in real estate investment the last, I guess, like 7 or 8 years, right? But I also understand how that exact industry has forced me out of my own home. And I recently have made contact with an investor back home in Hawaii who makes it a purpose to sell, to try and target like local Hawaiian families. And whether or not, okay, cool, like maybe this person may not be able to financially afford to buy this home right now. Okay, cool, I'll rent it to them, or they will they focus on trying to keep more Hawaiian families at home. And which is it's a fine line to walk because of the Fair Housing Act, right? Like you can't just say, oh, I won't sell to you because you're not Hawaiian, right? But if like that's if that's the goal of that person's business, then all right, cool, like that's that's where we'll go. But yeah, like there definitely is a right way and a wrong way to do it, because yeah, like if you come in and you're buying this property at like $150,000 and then you're trying to turn it for 600, 8,000, because like honestly $8,000 on Oahu is a steal.
Let me stop you for half a second, and I'm gonna give it to Lady P because you said something that was interesting, and Lady P caught it like I caught it, and so Lady P, what'd you catch?
Gentrification. I've yet to hear the right way. Where's the right way that you were talking about?
Oh, I think I misspoke.
Did you already say the right way?
No. I think that I misspoke. I'm sorry. Gentrification in itself, I don't personally believe in.
So you were talking about like actual purchasing of real estate.
Okay. I think that there is a right way to invest in real estate.
Okay, because that hit my ear as well, and I was like,
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's my fault. I think that there is a right way to invest in real estate that will allow local people and people that already live there to thrive versus just coming in there and turning the entire thing around, which is what I believe gentrification is. So I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Welcome in, Swan Raid. Welcome in, Swan Raid. As you get in, tap the screen, share the live, send your daily heart me. It's only one coin for not only the Swan Raid, but if you're in here right now and you've not sent your daily heart me, it's only one coin. Go ahead and send that, and then make sure you go back in and claim it. You have to claim it in order for it to count. So make sure when you send your daily heart me, you hit that claim. Also, guys, we still have $230 left in our nightly donation goal. So Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all the pay links are in the link tree in the bio. Santana Speaks 24, best way to support the live. If you're watching over on YouTube and you would like to support, you can do so with a YouTube super chat. The conversation, this conversation with racism and anti-blackness, and we are digging into other things like understanding the difference between genuine discourse and hubris, for lack of better words, classism versus racism. We're talking about the different spaces, white spaces, black spaces, blue spaces, and we're also talking about the location as far as access to certain things or lack of access when it comes to food deserts, food swamps, or even what we were just talking about, gentrification. Thank you so much, Swan. So, Coach Polly, I wanted to be able to let you finish where you were going with it, because I think that it's interesting how a lot of people have that lived experience that you're speaking to, and approximately what's your age, Coach Polly?
I'm 31.
31, got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, at least to me. Like, I think this is becoming more and more of a thing. Not saying that it hasn't been before, but like this is something that's like now becoming a strategic type deal, right? Where people are specifically not only buying up property for the intent of utilizing it for themselves, but now you see like the market with like Airbnb becoming super popular, where people want to actually purchase a bunch of property just to actually rent it out, not to actually live in it anymore. So I apologize.
Yeah, no. So Airbnb specifically and like short-term rentals actually hurt the local economy of a lot of tourist locations, but it's specifically Hawaii because it takes away from the available housing that we have, and we already have a housing epidemic because we can't afford to live there as it is. So me personally, I even though like I am interested in real estate in general, like I don't foresee myself ever actually taking part in an Airbnb venture, no matter where that's at. Even though like I live right now on the mainland.
Do you think that's because of your lived experience that like you had to go through that, and so now you're like that's a red line for me?
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I do understand how like a lot of landlords could be seen as slumlords and everything, but I don't necessarily think that all landlords are slumlords or that all landlords are bad people, because I think that there is a good way that you can be a landlord and you can help people have housing and be ethical. But you know, like the way that things are going, even like right now, I live in, well, that's fine, I don't care. But I live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I'm in a college town. And there is a large amount of like very unethical landlording done here, just where I'm at. And we're not even a tourist location, you know? So, I definitely think that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things when it comes to that. But as far as like Airbnb and short-term rentals is concerned, just because of the harm that I see that it does to local communities, that's just something that I would not be interested in doing.
Okay. Hold tight for me just a moment. Nancy, you haven't had an opportunity to speak in a while. Is there anything that you would like to add to the conversation, whether it be speaking to the different locations that are impacted, or anything else that we've covered so far that you wanted to get an opportunity to speak on?
No, yes, of course. So I was actually looking into the comments, and just a lot of people were saying how like all landlords are slumlords. And I just kind of wanted to speak from experience. So I understand the gentrification part of it, because same thing happened to my family. I grew up living in Miami, Florida, and we basically got pushed out because they wanted to build hotels in the house that we used to live in. So then we ended up moving to Washington State after that happened. And then I ended up actually owning a house in Missouri. And what happened with that is that I got a house in Missouri, which was really, really cheap to pay the mortgage. It was only $800 for a 4-bedroom house. And once I had to move out of the state, I had to rent a house, right? And because of things that had happened to me, I'm like, I am not going to overcharge people to live in this house. So I literally charged them like only $50 above what my mortgage was. So $850. I did not make any money off of them really except for $50. And everybody was like, you can charge more. The average rent is about $1,200. But I didn't want to, because I felt like as long as my mortgage is paid, that's fine with me. But then also I see the other side of things, because they elected this person into local office that basically decided to pass certain laws which made our taxes for property owners go up a lot, and basically made my mortgage go up at another $300. And so it puts you in this dilemma of like, I don't want to be I don't want to say like I'm abusing it, but also like when taxes and stuff go up, like what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of like I'm playing devil's advocate here just to, put it out there. So that's just my perspective on it. It's like, of course, I can probably put up the rent maybe $300 more, the exact same amount that my taxes went up, which is I think the ethical thing to do. But I know most people are not going to do it, but some will, some won't. But, we got to consider that as well. Taxes out of the roof right now for property owners.
Hold that thought for just a moment. W's in the chat for Swan. Swan, thank you for sending. Hey, Lady P is a sub now. What up? Welcome to the family, Lady P.
One on my other page.
Say it again.
On my other page.
That's what I'm talking about. You double subbed up. Kay, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Guys, Kay is going to hold down the panel just for a moment. I need to step away for just half a second. I'll be right back. Kay, you got it.
Your half a seconds are not half.
It's half of a second. Like half of a half of a second. Like you can literally like count it. I'm like
You're wasting time. Well, now that he's gone, what can we do? Does anyone want? I know, Jillian, you haven't really had a chance to talk, and Madam, and then if we want to go back to Frey.
Let's see, I guess I could, we have on there location matters, and I don't know, I mean, that could go in so many different directions. But I think if we're talking about like deconstructing, like that's something I'm looking at specifically. And Kay, I know you've worked on that a lot. I think location matters in that I live in a little mill town where like saying white is the majority is an understatement. And so it's hard for me to see anything in real life on a regular basis that would help me be more aware, I guess. I don't know if somebody wants to take my little rambling and go somewhere with it, but
well, I know that what we were doing more talking about location is we're actually talking about the physicality of how racism and redlining and all of that is perpetrated. So like our interstate system actually having physical, like concrete, barricades to, segregate cities. Like Chicago's a really good example. We have I-94 that runs right down between our west side and the east side, where there's luxury high rises, and then it kind of moves into that gentrification as we have different lots that are near Chicago that we if we had some type of like land bridge over that, that's like something that we could do as a solution, but it's so much money and it wouldn't generate the revenue. So then the city doesn't want to take a look at things like that. But city built specifically to perpetuate racism and redlining and segregation. So when we were talking about location, we were talking about that.
Okay.
When you're talking about the deconstruction part of it, yeah, I mean, when you are in an area where there doesn't seem to be the need, or like the perceived need, because there's always a need. It may seem to get hard to get started, and that's why I think like coming outside of your bubble is always a good way to do that, which you do all the time.
Yeah. Let me say this real quick. I apologize. Welcome in, Parker Raid. Welcome in, Parker Raid, guys. As we get in, tap the screen. How to partner? Tap the screen, share the live. If you are not following me, if anyone's looking up at the top and it says follow and you're not following me, go ahead and hit that follow button. This is the main account now, so make sure you are actually following this account. This is the main account. When you're here, do all the wonderful things, right? Tap the screen, share the live, understand the space and what we're in the midst of having a wonderful conversation. Continue to roll forward from what we talked about last week, dealing with racism and anti-blackness. We are now looking at the intersectional points of that with multiple aspects, guys. So while you're in here, enjoy the actual conversation. If you want to add to the conversation, you can definitely request up. Or always, guys, we still have W's in the chat for Jacob. Jacob sent a $3 donation saying, "Good to see you again, friend." Jacob, wonderful to see you, guys. We still have $227 left in the nightly donation goal. There's plenty of people now. If 227 people send $1, we can close out the nightly donation goal. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all the pay links and the link tree in the bio. Santana Speaks 24, best way to support the live. Everything's accepted, anything's appreciated. Parker sent his love. I love Parker too. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jillian.
Oh, I don't know if I had anything like, I don't know, important. Yeah, it's definitely very weird living where I live and working at a biker bar. One of the clubs here, there's a black man in the club, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Wasn't expecting that. Well, their clubhouse has a big swastika sign in it, so it's a strange place. It's a strange place.
Mm.
Yeah.
I work at the bar. The bar does not have that stuff.
But the clubhouse does.
Yeah. I went there.
The bar is in the clubhouse?
Sorry, one second.
No. Completely separate. The bar's unaffiliated. We have lots of different bikers that come in. But I went to the clubhouse with a bunch of people after I got off work one night, and I was like, it was so uncomfortable. I never went there again. I was like, what?
Oh, okay.
Let me say this because I didn't realize we got a Parker Raid over on YouTube as well. Welcome in, Parker Raid over on YouTube. Thank you guys for being there. Tap this, or not tap the screen, like the stream, like the live. Make sure you follow, right? And W's in the chat for Justin, who sent a $4.99 YouTube super chat saying, "Just sub. Thanks for what you're doing, Santana." Listen, Justin, you're absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for that YouTube super chat. All right, I apologize. I just wanted to recognize that raid as well. Lady P, you got it. You were saying.
So what I really want to do is revisit a topic earlier. I think we already know. I really want to revisit the Mexican topic because I love that topic. Frey was saying something earlier, and my girls were trying to comment on it earlier. They wanted to hear me comment on it, but I missed what Frey said, and I think we've established the gentrification topic, so I really wanted to revisit that.
Well, I mean, we can roll forward into one of these topics specifically. I'm thinking that you were talking about the the actual breakdown of race, we can.
Oh,
I guess
that's
we can
exactly
revisit race,
what I
but like
heard.
we wanted to focus on where we are here. I think there was some when we were talking about Nancy and clarifying her race, and then what was listed on the census and all this other stuff. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So, because it was a comparison to like the race and why people struggle to identify with race here. Mexico does have racial categories. That was something I wanted to mention. Mexico has racial categories. They have mestizo or white, which is also Spaniard. They have Afro-Mexican, which they just began to recognize in 2022, which refers to Black people in Mexico, and they have indigenous. So Mexico has racial categories. So I don't know why it would be hard for Mexican people to identify with race here in America. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because
No,
they have race.
you know what it is, and I don't want to speak for.
Real quick, is that okay?
Yeah.
Lady P, I just kind of wanted to see, because just from my and this is just speaking from my personal experience. I don't know if anybody else has a different one, but I do want to say, for most of my life that I lived here, whenever I have been filling out documentation for race-wise, the only ones that I have seen, it's white, Black. Sometimes they have like Pacific Islander sometimes, and then indigenous. And that's all that I have seen. I've never seen anything else besides that on a form that I have filled out. So it is hard for me to identify with a specific, when you have only those four choices, it's very hard for me to identify with a specific one. So I kind of wanted to get like your perspective, like since you also say you have Mexican family, I would love to know like how do they classify themselves when they come upon that situation?
My black Mexican family identifies as Black, and the rest are indigenous. So it's not really hard for them. They know their races. Many of them are from Mexico. They identify with their race. They've identified with their race before coming to America, because they faced their experiences were largely shaped by their race. As far as what I was just saying earlier, I was speaking on the racial classifications in Mexico, not necessarily Mexican people's experiences in America. And so that's why I understand why it would be hard for people that are Mexican to identify with a race, especially considering the fact that white supremacy is at large in Mexico. It's a very big thing. So I wasn't, so that's what I'm understanding, because it does result in the erasure of Black people, and it impacts Afro Latino people here in America. When we look at the experiences of Black people in America that are Latino, Haitian people were the first people to be sent on a boat back, not a boat, on a plane back to Haiti right out of the trunk and back into office. But because Black people are not seen as Hispanic or Latino, because everybody wants to call that their race, nobody really cared or spoke up about that. But we wanted to be all out in protest and spark riots across the country on a No King's Day, because of something of the experiences that are happening to non-Black Latino people. So that's a problem. So when people go here and they just identify with Mexican, when we're talking about race, which we all know race to be based on phenotypes, that's the problem. It erases people.
Yeah. So I brought Swan up, and I wanted to give Swan a few minutes to hop in on this subject and give her the floor. Swan, I'm gonna go ahead and go immediately to you, and then we'll continue to pass it around the panel.
To race, right?
Yeah, I thought that you might have some specific leverage. I didn't know if you came up for something else, but when you requested up when they got into this part, so I thought you might wanted to add to this.
Yeah, no, well, Lady P said it perfectly. I think that a lot of times you find that in Hispanic and Latino communities, you have people who are white and they will try to other themselves from being white, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a great grandmother her family came over to Puerto Rico. She was born in Puerto Rico, but her family came over there because they had a business there. And she married a Taino man. They had 12 children, I believe. So my that's my great grandmother. So my grandmother, she would be white biracial, and then my mom would be black biracial, right? But I think that's something that gets very frustrating for myself, and I'm sure indigenous people as well. That when we have people who are Puerto Rican, people who are Hispanic or Latino, whatever the case is, they come into a conversation and they try to other themselves from their whiteness, right? Which is very problematic because, like Lady P says, that is it's erasure to the experiences of other people. And I think one thing that I've noticed, I would say this is just my opinion. I think like in places like Puerto Rico, depending on where you are, nationalism is pushed. And I think that takes people's attention away from oppressive systems because there's this kind of like this mindset that like, everybody, like in Puerto Rico, people literally think that everybody is of three categories, like a mixture of three categories, which we know it's not true, right? There are white Puerto Rican people, Asian Puerto Rican people, Black Puerto Rican people, all of those, right? But for some reason that's like a narrative that's perpetuated where they think all people are Taino, European, and of African descent. That's not true. You would have to literally do like a 23andMe, to figure all of that out. But I think that's something that it needs to be spoken on more. White people who are Hispanic and Latino have to stop centering themselves and othering themselves from their whiteness because it does take away from the experiences of indigenous and Black, Hispanic, Latino people. It's very important that they acknowledge that.
I agree. I would be remiss if I didn't come back to you, Nancy, to see if you had anything else that you wanted to add on from what both Lady P and Swan said, or any thoughts or anything.
Oh no, yeah, I totally I love what Swan said, and I love coming in this panels and learning, and also it makes me think about my own self. But it kind of leaves me. I just personally feel like it leaves me in a way. I feel like it leaves me in an uncategorized race, if that makes sense. Just within America, and I'm just talking about within America, because I feel like if one says like me that I was born in Mexico but I migrated to America, and when people ask like what race are you, if I say white, people are gonna say no, you don't look white. If I say this, oh no, you don't look like that. Like that, I feel like there's not like a specific one that I can choose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's where I was thinking as well, as far as having I've seen the lack of commitment when it comes to being able to say, well, I'm Black, I'm white, and but I'm going to defer to you again because I don't feel like my comments would be where it should be.
Yeah.
I'll let you address what she said.
You're saying that you feel as though you don't have a racial category that you belong to. Is that correct?
Yeah, just specifically more like when it comes to in America, like I was saying, for example, like when I'm filling out paperwork and stuff like that, I don't feel that there's like a 100% fitting category for people like myself, because the most that I see as an option is white, Black, indigenous, or Pacific Islander. And I feel like I don't 100% fit into one of those. So unless there's like an other option, which sometimes it's not, it kind of leaves you with a connotation of I don't feel like I'm correctly identifying myself. Does that make sense?
That's like a nuanced conversation. Cause so my grandmother, whose parents, one parent was Taino and the other one was European, she didn't necessarily look like I hate to say this like this, but she was white. She was classified as white. I think that there may possibly be some ambiguousness to her, right? But I think overall, she would classify herself as white because she knows that there are privileges that she has. I think that it really does depend on your history. So like I don't know your family lineage or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that some people are indigenous, right? And they have a community that they belong to. I can't speak on that because I don't belong to an indigenous community, but I think that that's something that you would have to really like work on exploring. And I've recently heard the term criollo. I don't know if you know that term.
Yeah, I've heard it before.
Yeah, like someone was saying, explaining it to me that in Mexico, because it's not exactly the same in Puerto Rico, but they would say you could either be mestizo or you could be criollo. So I don't know. I think that that's something that is culturally specific to Mexico. But so I will pass it to Lady P because I feel like Lady P wants to chime in too.
I mentioned this earlier, but so you go to the census to their page, the title updates to race/ethnicity standards for our nation. They do speak on here that after years of scientific research, extensive public engagement, and federal expert review and deliberation, on March 28, 2024, the U.S. Office of Management and Budget published the results of its review of Statistical Policy Directive number 15 and issued updated standards for maintaining, collecting, and presenting race/ethnicity data across federal agencies. I will not read the entire page. However, in regards to the race question on the census, it will change, which will domino effect onto the rest of the country. Meaning that the race question will become one question, and it will have 6 racial categories. So this will be American Indigenous or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Middle Eastern or North African, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and white tea. So Hispanic or Latino will still be an ethnic group because it's going to say race/ethnicity, and Hispanic or Latino is the only category that says individuals of Mexican, Puerto Rican, Salvadorian, Cuban, Dominican, Guatemalan, or other Central or South African or Spanish cultural origin, whereas every other category says individuals with origins in any other original peoples of X, Y, and Z area. So Hispanic or Latino will still be an ethnic group. However, in this question, you will be able to pick one answer, and that will satisfy the question. So you can still pick Latino, and satisfy the answer for the race/ethnicity question, and this will domino effect to the rest of the country. And the reason for this satisfaction is because just like Nancy was saying, just like Nancy was saying, a lot of Hispanic people are mestizo, and that's because of Mejor de la Raza as well as mestizaje. Because most Hispanic and Latino people are mestizo, and they don't identify with being either white tea or indigenous for real because of the erasure of indigenous people, but still not the same phenotypical attributes as a traditional Spaniard person. And we don't have a racial category in America called mestizo, but many other countries do. So where in Mexico it'll be easier, in America it's harder, and they've already shown that a lot of people who identify with being Hispanic will tend to like utilize the other category or the white tea category, but typically the other category. And they've shown that when they use that when they allow people to satisfy the answer with just Hispanic, the other category usage goes down, and that correlation is there. So they're already catering to this. I think I don't think that it's really going to be effective. Well, I think it'll be effective, but I think it'll have like a negative impact on Black Hispanic people because it will sway the numbers for Black Hispanic and Latino people and underrepresent them even more than they already are. But
so let me hop in and say this. So the one thing that I didn't necessarily want to speak to, but I think that because I love the fact that there is a conscious effort to at least quote unquote flush out the category, right? To make it more hyper specific or whatever the case may be, to give the people the opportunity to identify. What I tend to think of, and the reason why I originally was like, I don't want to say anything, and I tried to pass it to Swan. I think that there's a layered aspect when it comes to the culture, and I think that just like Black people have some colorism issues that they struggle with, I think that that's prevalent within that community as well. And so I think that's another aspect of it. Not just having that, just the place where you can check off a box or whatever, but it's other actual issues. But Nancy, you're about to say something.
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought you were about to say something. Okay. Well, in that case, I mean, I know we've kind of went off on a like a whole trail, but I want to come back over to JBS. How are you, my friend?
How are you, man?
Good, good, good. What would you like to add to the conversation?
You know, if I may, with your permission, earlier you were talking about, I think Coach Polly was talking about lending and gentrification. It piqued an interest. I spent 29 years in banking, and several of those years in mortgage. And I have out of curiosity, I have a question for the panel, and let me know if you all know the answer. How many homes do you think are abandoned as a result of no beneficiary or next of kin to claim the property when the homeowners have passed away nationwide? Anyone guess how many homes?
Sure, a ton.
1.3 million to 1.4 million homes nationwide lost. Do you know where those vacant and abandoned homes typically go to if they don't escheat to the state?
Well, I was thinking the state.
In some cases, they do. Oftentimes, they're sent to auction houses, and they're auctioned off to the highest bidder. One of the reasons I bring this up, because 500,000 of the residential properties are lost to heirs, but ultimately are abandoned as a result of the inability to engage in conversations to retrieve the homes. And then unclaimed estates, I think there's no actual clear number, but it's a significant amount. Whether it's a home, an account, savings checking, a lot of those, when they're unclaimed, when you have no beneficiary, are headed to the state. I state that because one of our biggest issues as a society, when you think about financial literacy as a struggle, part of that comes with also understanding lending and how to work with your mortgage company, whether it's a bank. Oftentimes people will go to broker to pay additional fees to have them shop for rates, and people don't know they can walk into a branch and identify a mortgage lender without paying those additional costs. 37% Santana and group, 37% of our population has less than $400 each month at the end of each month to survive on. Only 60+% of our country's citizens can, more than 67% cannot answer 4 of the 5 basic financial literacy questions, simply credit, establishing a relationship with an institution, and ultimately getting to the more complex things. And so part of the understanding of how to engage in thoughtful conversations around home ownership, understanding where to go in terms of lending and avoiding the redlining, because you also mentioned redlining, and the most recent case was in 2025. I believe Chicago was one of the areas, specifically Chicago, Atlanta, and NYC, have city level redlining, is understanding financial literacy at the fundamental level. And our schools have missed that opportunity, whether it's middle school, high school, not until you get to, advanced education, graduate school. Undergrad doesn't even teach you financial literacy. So people start understanding, my kids included, I have 4, my kids included, understand the importance of knowing their credit score, how to shop for a lender, what communities to shop for. And part of that is engaging in seminars, tutoring sessions, going to workshops that help you identify how to best find a lender, how to best save for a mortgage, what banks are looking for. And I think as you're holding these conversations, Santana, along with the rest of the group, these are important reminders. And I thought I can come up here and share, since I'm limited on time, are important reminders for all of us that to have a trust established for our home, to have beneficiaries listed on accounts in a form of a trust, so that God forbid something were to happen to us, me, you, that our beneficiaries are seamlessly acquiring these assets when we pass away. And so we forget these things. And dealing in the industry for 29 years, I often found that was one of the biggest pitfalls for the Latino community, for the Black community, people in my community, the Middle Eastern community, that we don't understand these nuances, how to better ourselves long term. And we get caught in this cycle of having our kids not have any assets to live by, not even acquiring our home when we leave. So I just wanted to share that, and I'll land there, man. Hopefully that was helpful. I know it was a high level overview, but I just wanted to share that as you're talking about some of these things, Santana.
Yeah. I think a couple of people have a couple of questions for you.
Please.
My first question, because I know Black Swans peeped something, but my question was how do you specifically feel about, because since you're like knowledgeable, I want to get like your thoughts on like what I would call like home extortion, or whatever way of extortion means, because I know that a very popular way that people go about flipping homes or attaining property is by extorting people with unpaid property taxes, and those property taxes are able to be paid, and then people can go ahead and put a lien on your house and stuff like that, and from these people. So how do you think how do you feel like that works specifically in regards to Black and non-Black Hispanic communities?
I think our biggest problems, just broadly speaking, if someone can go into a community and find an owner saying, I will pay your property taxes and place a lien on your home, that's not where the problem, and then have ownership of your home unless you pay this off and I can acquire the property. That's not where the problem started. That is a symptom of the cause. And the cause is the broader picture, which is the lack of education that's injected into the various communities. We need to start there. I think that's unfathomable that you would take advantage of someone saying, I'll pay your taxes, put a lien on your property, because I don't know who I'm dealing with. And I'm not saying that every individual that goes into these situations has ill intent, because family members can do it. And ultimately, if you pay them back, then the home is yours. But I think if you're going into that situation with ill intent, that's a symptom. You just don't do it. But I think the broader issue is where it starts. And one of the biggest issues we had in the Great Recession, speaking of these situations, I want you to think back to the Great Recession in 2008. At that point, during the housing bubble, you can walk into a bank and say, I make $250,000 a year. I rent right now, right? And I work as a server at XYZ. Didn't matter who you were. You didn't have to verify that you made $250,000 a year. So the banks got greedy. Will auto approve you, no verification of income. Go buy two different homes for the salary you just indicated. So I think the issue is the banking system in its greed, because ultimately the bottom line for the banks is what they're striving for. So we need to educate our communities better. We need to create workshops, and people need to take advantage of workshops that help them understand the lending landscape. So I know that was a bit of a long-winded answer. I hope I was able to give you two perspectives there.
Lady P?
I don't really have any issues with that. I think I definitely do agree. It definitely did start before the person came into the community. I had to get the numbers for it there, but there is a racial disparity amongst financial literacy for Black people as opposed to their white counterparts, which are the majority of
absolutely
buying up the property taxes and extorting these people for homes. So, but I had to get those numbers though. But I don't disagree with what you said.
Yeah, I would not combat that one moment for sure.
Swan, you had something.
I think my concern was a little different than what he spoke on, but just like in terms of banks lending money out, that's what first popped into my head. But I think you were addressing something else. But I do want to say this. I think that there is a misconception, and Adorna had pulled this out one time, but it was literally a breakdown of how the Black community is spending their money in society, and we are very financially responsible. We have the education. It's just that the opportunities are, we're overlooked. We have hurdles, we have barriers. I think it was Citigroup that put out a study that said banks cost themselves, I believe it's $16 trillion because they would refuse.
Yeah, I think that's the number she gave.
Yeah, $16 trillion.
This is regarding redlining, right, Swan?
Yeah. This is
yeah.
They refused to loan money out to Black people that were qualified or overqualified for, you know, for these loans. That was the first thing that had popped into my head, but I think you were touching on something different than that.
Yeah, no, redlining is definitely prevalent, and it continues today. I mean, the mortgage firm in 2025 paid 1.75 million. I think Citigroup and Bank of America was about 5 years ago. They paid a significant amount of money. Fairway Mortgage, and we're talking 2024, paid $8 million plus 1.9 million in penalties. And mind you, these are the firms that were caught in redlining. It doesn't mean there are other firms that are not engaging in this. It's just yet to be uncovered, and be mindful of that. And I think that's why I agree with you, 1,000%. There's significant opportunity. A lot of the various communities do understand financial literacy, do understand how to buy a home, how to save for a home, but are the banks allowing them the opportunity to engage in those conversations? And so, anything else, Santana, before I drop in?
Well,
It's family time for me. Go ahead.
yeah. Cade, I know you came up. Did you have something for JBS, or did you want to speak on something else?
No, I during the whole like dissertation of that, like it seemed like there was a lot of like privilege talking from that, and not really understanding that, you know, those communities are, you know, financially literate, and that there's a disparity, but it's for a completely different reason. And like to just come up and be like, make sure that you sure your home is in a trust and all of that. I don't know, it struck me as something that like was not really kind of topical to what we're speaking about right now.
I apologize. That wasn't the intention. Trust me, I came from a impoverished home. So I grew up in an environment where we were on food stamps, we were on SNAP back in the day. So this was more educational. If I came across as privileged, sincere apologies. It was more educational than anything else. I say that not saying that not any individuals listening don't have that.
We have a problem. Like we collectively that look like us have a problem, and now you're going straight into the I'm from poverty and the classism thing, and it wasn't privilege, but you're 29 years in the business, and where you're at now isn't where you were when you were, you know, a child or how you grew up. It's where you are now with the knowledge that you have, and you came in and then told people that they needed to teach their children when the literacy is there. It's the fact that the opportunity is not there, and for a long-standing reason. So
apologies,
I'm just
that
trying
wasn't
to
the
say,
intention.
like, as much as you're trying to get people educated, you're also like falling into the spiral and traps that most of us white people do, which is like, oh no, I'm not talking from a privileged place. I grew up poor. That doesn't mean anything. That's why there's a difference between classism and racism.
My bad if that's the way it came across. Apologies, Santana. I never intended it for that to happen. So in Group and K, if that's the way it was received, understood. Good call out for me, and I'd be cognizant of how I come up going forward.
Yeah, I'll just say, like I appreciate everyone on the panel, Lady P, Swan, Kay, and even you, JBS. I think that what you said has validity, and even more so, it was rolled forward into a very important point that was able to be hammered down on. And I understand like certain instances where you want to share things that you think is important. But yeah, I think the impact versus the intent was a little bit off, and I'm glad that we were at least able to talk through that. Yeah.
No, well received. I appreciate it, man. Thank you, and Kay, appreciate the feedback. It's a never ending process in terms of learning. So I appreciate it. All good.
All right.
Thanks for having me, man. And again,
Absolutely.
everyone, good to see you. Appreciate the time.
Likewise. Enjoy your family time.
Thanks, man.
Can I respond to that with the classism?
You got it.
Okay, thank you. So I definitely do agree with Kay. However, I do want to say that So when we're talking about literacy and the literacy rates, first and foremost, only 25% of Americans can read at a sixth grade level or above. That's American adults, period. Can only read up to a fifth grade level, and 21% are completely illiterate. This is for American adults. So when we talk about Black people, specifically Black people in these neighborhoods and areas where things are not getting paid, or they don't know how to upkeep their property and stuff like that, they're like that is an area where literacy is low. Literacy as far as just reading and critical thinking skills, in addition to financial literacy, is low. I do believe that we as Black people have the means and the resources to know about financial literacy and teach it to one another. That's why our D9 or organizations do promote that as well. However, those of us within the Black community that have like higher levels of financial literacy are not living in those areas and are not taking ownership of those homes that are being extorted by white people. There are Black people who engage in Black capitalism and believe that when you strive for capitalism, that is going to get you out of racism, and it doesn't. And these people who are capitalists have individualistic mindsets and will typically remove themselves from their family that lives in the hood. Like you try to get the family out the hood, but you really just get yourself out of there, right? So that's something that people do. And I think that that's something that that I want to keep in mind. Like they're not extorting the Black people that actually are learning about financial literacy and stuff like that. They're extorting the ones that can't read. Many of our grandparents cannot read. A lot of them have dropped out in elementary school and middle school to work because we've always had to work. So I do want to keep that in mind as well. I do think it is kind of crazy though to just say put your stuff in a trust when we could have addressed the much bigger problem.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that, and the not only the financial literacy within the Black community, but access is both like major keys when it comes to those type of things, and even more so like I find value in advice, and so I don't disregard that, but also I think it's really important to hammer down the root. And I know even throughout this night we've gotten kind of all sidetracked with different conversations, and I know me as a host, that's my responsibility to keep us focused, but I don't want to lose sight of where we are. Like especially this week, I really want to try to make sure that I continue to keep sight of where we are and continue to focus on these specific topics, because I think they're so important, and we're going to continue to actually drill down on those. So yeah, I mean, you can connect it, but we always got to make sure we come back to the main thing. So anywho,
can I say something?
Sure. I was actually just about to say last words because it's actually t-shirt time. So go ahead, Brenda.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with it being unsolicited advice. When people, just offer up something that no one, asked them about, and just say, oh, this is something that I know about. If you want to know more, feel free to ask or something like that. But just to assume, and to give some advice that no one ever, asked for, especially, coming from a white person and, a group of, people, a group that's, of a lot of different races and that sort of thing, I think, is part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, not everything fits every situation for sure. So I will leave it at that. W's in the chat for Terrell. Terrell sent a $5 donation saying thank you for what you're doing. Always a fan. Terrell, thank you so much for that $5 donation. You're far too kind. Fee, what up, Fee? Fee sent a $10 donation saying just thanks. Fee, you are too kind. You absolutely did not have to do that. Add it to the nightly donation goal. Thank you, Fee. Real quick, Nancy, any final words for you?
I just from the very last guest that was talking, and I just kind of was thinking about it, and I think, and maybe I don't know if you guys agree or not, but I think the newer generations are getting more financially educated, and a lot of us are educating our parents and grandparents, and we're trying to break the cycle. And I think it's good that we can just continue to do that, and hopefully that can make a difference.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a shift, and which it should be, right? There should always be generations building on generations, and so at least in my perspective, watching the Black community and the approach that has been taken as far as not only pursuing education and literacy, but financial stability and entrepreneurships and all of those things, and so that's how it should be, right? Building on top of each other. So absolutely. Wait, Nancy, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. Actually, Nancy, Brenda, and Lady P, thank you three. I'm going to drop all three of you, okay?
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for having me up. Yeah, I always love to be part of these conversations. My daughter's in Japan right now, so this gave me something to do aside from my 13-year-old being that far away. Yeah, and it's my birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday.
Hey, wait, are you going to be here tomorrow?
No, I'm going to be at work, and then I'm going to do karaoke all night.
Oh, okay, well.
Yeah.
You don't get the birthday song then. I don't
Well,
know.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll be 42.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, enjoy your birthday.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Night,
you.
everybody.
Have a good night. Swan, last words.
Yeah, I wish I was here earlier. I wish I got in earlier because I like the topics that you have up here, especially the spaces, black, white, and blue.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be carrying this. Is this going to be your topics for the rest of the week, or
tomorrow and Wednesday?
Got you.
Because you know, late nights is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we spar at times and all this other stuff. So
yeah, no, I'll definitely be back. I
Shiggity.
Cool hearing different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I also appreciate Lady P and all of the knowledge they have and standing 10 toes down for marginalized communities.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I might need to do something with you. Me and someone were having a conversation about something that I want to do, and I felt like this would be perfect for Swan and Swan Space. So, yeah, we might need to collab.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
All right. Thank you for coming home and hanging out.
Thank you for having me up. Have a good
All
night.
right. Yep. Hey, I saved you for last for a specific reason. Hold on. Give me a second. Let me do this. Oh, I didn't need to do that. Hold on. I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, wait, hold on. This is what I'm trying to do. Why are you on my side? Hold on. What's happening? Wait. Okay, there we go. All right, Kay. Hey, so what did you think about like earlier? That was fun, right? Like never mind. Like, what did you think about the night?
I thought it was good. I think we need to have a better handle on the blue space racism so that people aren't as confused.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I think that there should be a little bit more conversation about why it's so hard for people to kind of be called in, told they've made a mistake, and then like course correct and move on from that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, like egos get in the way. We saw that kind of recently, and so
That one specifically, I was gonna ask if you have time tomorrow, I would really love if you could join and like really drill down on that one. Like if
Sure.
Perfect. Okay. I
Okay.
think that's a big one. I think that the more I was thinking about it, I think that like that one was really missed in a sense that I know it wasn't given justice. So I really want to like focus on that one. Yeah. Anyway, last word.
I'm just going to correct something. Hold on. So blue space racism has nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans. Blue space racism is environmental racism that happens in blue spaces of recreation, such as like, pools, lakes, public spaces, public access spaces. And so I instead of giving out like wrong information, either Google it, read about it, or like join us tomorrow and we'll talk
Did they
about
think
it.
it was about?
there's-
They thought it was like a political thing.
Yeah, someone just gave out a little misinformation, so we're just fixing that. So, but like when there was segregation in the pools and how at first during like World War I, like everyone could come to the pools, and then after World War I, then there was like an issue with like wanting some type of segregation for that women couldn't be at the pool, and then it became more of a race issue. So there was a lot. So Jenny, you can come back tomorrow. We'll talk about more. You seem a little confused tonight, so come back and join us tomorrow. We'll kind of clarify some things.
What did they say?
They wanted me to repeat that.
Jenny?
I'm not going to tonight.
Oh, got it. All right.
Have a wonderful night.
You ready? Ready?
I guess.
All right, guys, we're getting out of here. Thank you guys for all the love tonight. This was actually a wonderful night. We're going to flesh this out even more and really get to the crux of what we are looking to have the conversation about this week. I promise you there is more to come. We have a lot to dig into. With all that being said, guys, thank you for all the likes, the taps, the shares. Thank you for all the gifts. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for being here. We will be back tomorrow for another Late Nights with Santana. I love you all. And as always, say it with me.